Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Monday, December 28th, 2020. On today's episode, we're going to discuss the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And writer Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hey, everyone.
So we're recording with a different method, as you heard. I think maybe the last time we recorded, we had some technical difficulties. So we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to find the best way to do this. And hopefully this sounds better. But let us know. Okay, let's dive into it. Let's go into the news. We haven't had a news episode in over a week, so we have a lot of things to get to. Let's first talk about how the government is hoping to save things like movie theaters. What's going on, HD?
Yes, so a new coronavirus relief bill has been announced by Congress. The House and the Senate have announced a compromise COVID-19 relief bill, which, if passed and signed by President Trump, will provide $15 billion in financial support to movie theaters and live event venues. And this comes many months after the first coronavirus relief bill, which didn't provide nearly as much designated money to theaters specifically. It was a $454 billion loan guarantee fund for businesses struggling from economic blowback from the pandemic, including theaters and such. But this one is specifically designates $15 billion for theaters and live venues. This is a bill that NATO, the National Association of Theater Owners, approved of, stating that with the federal government's aid, they can get movie theaters back on their feet. But it's while it's earmarked specifically for live event venues, independent movie theaters, and cultural institutions, it's unclear which movie theaters would qualify as independent and what exactly the specific details are pertaining to theaters.
But that would probably rule out like big dogs like AMC and Cinemark and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it probably would. And so it's unclear whether, everything is unclear for now. We don't know how it actually will play out, but this will be great for the independent chains that have been struggling, especially in the months since the pandemic started nearly a year ago.
Is there a chance that we come out of this whole thing with, I think we all assumed at the end of this thing that like there would be big movie theaters for, big blockbuster, Marvel films and stuff like that, and there would be nothing else but that. But is it possible at the end of this thing that we just have movie theaters for small indie art house films and nothing else? Yeah, I don't see that happening, but it's good that this is around for, these little small independent theaters to survive, because I know this pandemic has been hard. On a lot of businesses. I see I walk around my neighborhood and a lot of restaurants have already closed up around me. So it's like really sad. A lot of these like really small, family run businesses can't survive this thing, and hopefully the government can do the right thing and keep these things around so that I don't know what this post-pandemic world is going to be, but it's going to be weird. And I don't know about you guys, but this weekend, this holiday weekend, I watched Wonder Woman, and we'll talk about that later this week on the Water Cooler, Wonder Woman 1984, and I'm sure many of you watched it because I think they said something like half the subscribers of HBO Max watched this thing, so much that they've already greenlit a sequel. Brad, tell us about it.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it was half the retail subscribers that watched it, which means those who subscribed directly through HBO Max, and then there was millions more from those who subscribe through their cable service or their another partnership or something like that. So yeah, lots of people watched Wonder Woman 1984, and so Warner Brothers has now officially greenlit Wonder Woman 3, and supposedly it's being fast-tracked into development, as indicated in the press release, with Patty Jenkins returning to direct, and Gal Gadot returning as Diana, the Princess of Themyscira. And that's pretty much all we know for now. There was some talk previously about whether or not Jenkins would return for a third movie, because she was concerned that, the theatrical distribution model might be marred by Warner Brothers' upcoming plans by putting their entire theatrical slate for 2021 onto HBO Max the same day that those movies hit theaters. And so she said the only way she would come back would be essentially if, there was still a theatrical model. And so I'm betting that since this movie is, well past 2021, Warner Brothers was probably aware of this. I'm sure this movie is slated to be released in theaters. It remains to be seen, whether or not they will also give it an HBO Max in the future. There's no guarantee that that's something that won't be off the table, since as long as they guarantee that it gets released in theaters, that's what matters most. But it's really a wait and see thing, because some people are saying this Warner Brothers strategy is an experiment. Some people think that it could go beyond that, but as of now, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And even though they say it's being fast tracked, it's not clear exactly what that means as far as the timetable, because as we know, Patty Jenkins is also supposed to shoot Rogue Squadron, a new Star Wars movie, and that has a release date slated for December of 2023, which would seem to indicate that that movie is probably further along in development than Wonder Woman 3. But Patty Jenkins has also talked about already cracking the story with Jeff Johns and knowing what they're going to do with that. So I still think it's probably a safe bet that Wonder Woman 3 will come after Rogue Squadron, but anything is possible when we're dealing with movies in development.
Doesn't she also have other films that are greenlit? Like, isn't Cleopatra?
I don't know about greenlit, but that one I think is also in development. I don't remember if that was greenlit or not, but yeah, she's also working on a Cleopatra movie as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like not all three of these movies can happen, but maybe that's the cynical part of me. How did this do at the box office? Like, because this did play in theaters internationally, and it did play in theaters in the U.S. as well, right?
Yeah, all things considered, it did about as well as it could have with the coronavirus pandemic. In the United States, there wasn't really a big dent. It only made $16.7 million at the domestic box office, but in the age of coronavirus, that was a pretty big deal. And then worldwide, combined with, since it actually opened the week before Christmas in international markets, and so combined with the domestic box office, as of this past weekend, it had made $85 million worldwide.
Wow, that's actually a lot of money. But it's interesting because, like, I feel like even with that amount, it probably didn't crack like the top 1,000 like openings of all time. Do you know what I mean? Like that's like such a small opening for a big blockbuster superhero film. But obviously, obviously, it's interesting circumstances. So you mentioned before that Warner Brothers was putting all their 2020 movie slate on HBO Max. That was a big decision that they made. A lot of people, including us, were speculating that this could be the beginning of the end. We're the guy on the street, like the homeless guy on the street with the sign saying, like, the end is near. Patty Jenkins signing on for a third Wonder Woman film when she, believes this requires the theatrical model, I think shows me that at least she believes that Warner Brothers doesn't want to go for an all streaming future. And I know there was a story today that kind of outlined what Warner Brothers plans were for the future of the DC universe. HT, what do we know?
Yes, DC film chief Walter Hamada unveiled the plan that he has for the expanding DC film universe, and it basically paints a portrait of the bigger theaters getting released. The bigger superhero movies getting released to theaters, while the smaller, quote-unquote, riskier films get released to HBO Max. So movies like Wonder Woman, like Black Adam, for example, will be hitting theaters, while films like the Batgirl film or Static Shock will be targeted for HBO Max. But one thing that they'll share in common is that they will all be considered for potential HBO Max spin-off series, which we started to see the seeds of starting to be planted as well, like with the Suicide Squad spin-off featuring John Cena's Peacemaker, as well as spin-offs of the Batman, and Patty Jenkins has even talked about doing a spin-off of her Wonder Woman series with the Amazon sort of centric one.
Yeah. Now, how do you think Warner Brothers' approach to the DC universe and this whole streaming thing is different than Disney's approach with MCU?
Oh, I think they're definitely taking a page out of Marvel's book, especially with the combined streaming theatrical approach that they're doing. And Hamada also explained that he intends to release at least 2 DC superhero films a year with a maximum of 4 a year, which feels very in line with what Marvel's been doing for the past 10 years. And the expansion into streaming spin-offs is very much in line with what Marvel's done in the post-Endgame phase with TV shows like WandaVision and Loki and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So it does feel like they're kind of going forward now with that intention in mind to sort of start rebuilding that DC film universe after the original approach didn't work out. But maybe this will work out for them this time.
Yeah, maybe. I'm curious though. Like, it's not that original streaming movies are a new thing. Obviously, Netflix has been doing that for years now. But we really haven't seen original streaming movies on the level of like a Wonder Woman or like what Disney is going to be doing with the Marvel series. It makes me wonder, like, do you think this will create like a 2-tier system of importance in that, like, I feel like audiences think like they put more value in a movie that plays in theaters than they do something they could just pop on Netflix. Do you think the same will happen when, in the future there's DC movies on HBO Max, or do you think those people will be looking forward to them just as much as, they were looking forward to Wonder Woman 1984? Which is originally, theatrical only.
I think there will for sure be a 2-tier approach. And we've already started to see it too with some of the Disney releases. Not specifically Marvel shows, but like, for example, the live action Disney remakes that we've seen. Like, I think Lady and the Tramp came out on Disney Plus, and I don't remember anyone talking about it. And that, I think there is definitely a distinction between those things, and people have already started to make that distinction. And it's kind of the Netflix effect where people put things on in the background and they give less importance to it, and streaming services definitely cater to that tendency. But I wonder if they get big stars and people who actually were in the theatrical release movies, like the WandaVision, for example, is getting a lot of anticipation because it's got some of those main stars from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as Loki, and they're a miniseries, so they have like higher production budget and everything. So if they go for that approach, then maybe those titles will have as much anticipation as a theatrical release, and more so than just being like background fodder.
I don't know. It's interesting what Disney is doing with, it really seems like they're going big with these kind of things, like they're casting. I mean, aside from what you mentioned, like the Lady and the Tramps, or, what was that recent one with the fairy godmothers that came and went? I don't even remember the name.
Not Disenchanted. That's the
Godmother.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, it was. I even had it. I even said it, and I didn't even know the name of it. So yeah, I do feel like there's a 2-tier system over at Disney, but like what Marvel's doing is really interesting because it really does feel like they're putting as much effort, and they're putting the big names, and they're putting the big writers and directors on board with like what they're doing for their television series. So I'm interested to see if like something like HBO or Warner Brothers can recapture that with what they're doing on HBO Max. So it'll be interesting to see. Let's go away from superheroes for a second. Let's talk about horror movies. Last week we learned that David Gordon Green, who recently did that Halloween sequel, is in talks to direct another sequel for another huge horror franchise, I guess? Franchise movie? I don't know. Was Exorcist a franchise, Brad?
I mean, it had sequels, so yeah, sure.
I feel like people only cared about the first one, though.
I mean, I think that there might be like a decent, like at least cult following for one of the sequels, but I'm not deep into Exorcist lore, so don't quote me on that.
So tell us what's going on with this Exorcist sequel.
It has a director attached to it, apparently, and it's David Gordon Green, who recently rebooted the Halloween franchise with the 2018 sequel aptly titled Halloween, which was a movie that essentially ignored all of the sequels that came after the original Halloween and picked up 40 years after the events of the original movie to continue the story of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. So now it seems David Gordon Green has taken a liking to continuing the Exorcist franchise, as it were, but we don't really know exactly what he will be doing with this one, whether it will be similar to Halloween in that it will ignore any of the other sequels or anything like that. But we simply know that he is working on it, and maybe it'll be something that is good. I really don't know.
I was gonna say we do know it's a sequel, though. It's not like a reboot or remake.
Right.
But I'm wondering, like, how do you do this? Because I feel like you'd need Linda Blair, but I don't see like her being part of that. I mean, maybe she could, right?
I mean, it's. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility necessarily. It would certainly be an interesting way to continue the story if they were to bring her back somehow. But I don't know, because I think it's hard to do a movie like this if you're not, picking up threads from the original and not have it just be, another movie about an exorcism, and having it carry the Exorcist title really just feels like a way of selling it. So, I mean, maybe the best way to connect it is to bring back the same demonic entity from the original movie. And, but even then, I think you still have the same issue where it's like, okay, well, this is just an exorcism movie and happens to be using the Exorcist title. So, I really don't know. I think, a big part of what made the original Exorcist so good too is William Friedkin. And if he's not involved or if he hasn't given his blessing, then you have to wonder how fans will end up feeling about this too.
Well, I mean, but I feel like David Gordon Green has earned some enthusiasm from fans, like, for that Halloween movie. I feel like that really was, like, for a lot of people, the best Halloween sequel. So I don't know. And also Blumhouse is involved, and, Blumhouse is do they have a good track record? I feel like they produce a lot of stuff, but, like, I feel like the big ones have a good track record. The big theatrical titles.
Yeah, I think that when they hit, they hit pretty well. But like any studio that specializes in horror, there's going to be some duds in there, just because horror can be a challenging genre to make a successful movie in.
Yeah. We were talking before about Disney and what they're doing, and one of the projects coming up is a Lion King prequel movie, and this is going to be directed by Barry Jenkins, which when we learned that, we were all like, what? Huh? Like, we were like, why would Barry Jenkins be directing a Lion King prequel movie? Obviously, this, I think, is expected to go theatrical and not direct to Disney+. But now we have some idea why he signed on. HT, what do we know?
Well, Barry Jenkins reveals that when he was approached with the script and the idea for the Lion King prequel, he was as reluctant and skeptical as we all were when we heard that Barry Jenkins was directing a Lion King prequel movie. But he said that it was Chloe Zhao who is set to direct the Marvel movie Eternals, making the jump from indie filmmaking to big studio filmmaking, that convinced him to direct Lion King, which he was wary of taking on. And because the original animated film was such a classic and he held it in such high regard. And he said that it was her as well as Jeff Nathanson's script that really sort of gave him convinced him essentially to do it. He read the script. He said, this is really good. And he decided that if Zhao could do it, then he could do it.
Yeah. And he also said that, like, he was talking with his DP or something like that. And, like, the DP was like, I don't have the quote in front of me. Where is it? But it's just like, this is the chance to do something like what we do, but, like, in this realm. What do you think that means? Do you think it just means, like, a bigger budget?
I mean, I think it has to do with CG filmmaking, correct? Because The Lion
Yeah.
King is something that is so is I mean, CG filmmaking of like completely animal cast movie is so different than what Barry Jenkins does with his very humanistic, very face and character centric filmmaking. So it's certainly a challenge for him. And it would be interesting to see how he transplants that mode of filmmaking to what we have with the Lion King CG films. So maybe that's what he means. It's just more of a challenge and something that he can bring something new to, rather than the somewhat flat animated film that we got from Jon Favreau.
Is it weird? I was thinking about this the other day. Is it weird that like Disney is hiring all these live action filmmakers for these like these animated remakes, which are more and more not live action? Do you know what I mean? Like they're mostly animated. Like, isn't it weird that they're not like trying to find like an animation director that has like, has worked in that kind of realm? Because most of it, I'm assuming, is going back and forth with like animators and, figuring everything out in like animatics and stuff like that. And I was also thinking, and this came to me because I was like watching Pixar Soul, which is on Disney Plus. Everybody should watch it. We'll talk about this on the water cooler later this week. But I was watching that and like how great of a movie that is. And Pete Docter, that's his like, what is that? His fourth film? He did Monsters Inc. He did Inside Out. He did Up, and he did this. And I thought to myself, I was like, Pete Docter is such a great animated, director for animation films. And then like, I sat back and I was like, wait, no, Pete Docter is probably one of the best directors working today. Do you know what I mean? Like, not just animation, but as a whole, like his track record is like unmatched. So I don't know. It's just weird to me that like I feel like they keep on. I mean, not that I doubt Barry Jenkins and that he would be the right person to do this, because I'm very interested to do this. But it just seems weird that like they aren't. That there's like people like, I mean, obviously Brad Bird has made the transition from animation to live action. But there's like other people that, like the Andrew Stintons, and there's people that want to make that transition.
Travis
I
Knight.
feel like, yeah, those people I feel like wouldn't they be the better fit for these kind of movies? I don't know.
Yeah, there is like a different mode of filmmaking. There's a different almost physicality to animated films versus live action films. And I think of, like, for example, Travis Knight's Bumblebee movie, which is a good movie. And he comes from doing animation, like, it wasn't Coraline. It was Kubo and the Two Strings. And a lot of those types of animated films that have, like, this sort of lightness to it. And he brings that to Bumblebee in a way that feels like an animated film and feels more energized and exciting to see. Whereas I feel like photorealistic animation of like Lion King, which is so staunchly about being realistic, isn't as exciting to see as the animated Lion King film was, the original. So I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, because it seems like Disney's doing a lot more of these, and we'll see what kind of filmmakers they pick in the future. And I'm very interested to see what appealed to Barry Jenkins to do a Lion King movie. But let's jump back into Marvel and let's talk about Chadwick Boseman, who obviously died earlier this year, and we thought that we would never get a chance to see him back in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Black Panther, but that might not be the case after all. Brad, tell us about it.
Right, so since Chadwick Boseman passed away, we know that he will not be returning in Black Panther 2, and Kevin Feige has confirmed that the character will not be recast with a different actor. So it sounds like we will, won't see that iteration of Black Panther returning in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as far as the live-action side is concerned. But before he passed away, Chadwick Boseman was able to record lines for several episodes of Marvel's upcoming What If animated series. And this is an anthology series based on a series of comics that imagine alternate versions of Marvel's familiar heroes. So, for example, as we saw in the trailer that was released during Disney's big Investor Day presentation not too long ago, there will be a version of Black Panther, who instead of becoming Black Panther actually becomes Peter Quill or Star-Lord when he's picked up by Yondu in Wakanda. So that would be one episode that we'll hear Chadwick Boseman's voice as T'Challa in. But there will likely be other episodes as well. It'll be it's unknown as to what form we'll see Chadwick Boseman in. There's a likely chance that we will see him as Black Panther, but it also depends on what kind of story we'll see Black Panther in, where it will be something that takes a cue from a Marvel storyline, such as like the Zombies storyline, which we have seen also teased in the trailer with a zombie-fied version of Captain America, or if we'll simply see different versions of T'Challa as other Marvel superheroes. But it's very cool that Chadwick Boseman was able to finish this before it passed away, so that fans who are still mourning that big loss of him as Black Panther will get a chance to hear his work again.
I wonder, like, I don't know. I love the what ifs stories. Those were like some of my favorite comics as a kid. Like in the universe that that Black Panther doesn't become Black Panther and he ends up getting picked up by Yondu and becomes Star-Lord. Where does that leave Eric Killmonger, the Michael B. Jordan character?
That's a good question, and I don't know if that's something that gets answered in that episode, or if it merely follows a Guardians of the Galaxy storyline instead of seeing what happens to Wakanda in the wake of the heir to the throne being taken away from Wakanda. But I imagine we will find out when that series comes along.
Yeah. Another project that Disney has in the works over at Marvel for Disney Plus is She-Hulk, which when it was announced, we were kind of like, what is this going to be? Is this going to be like, she's a lawyer? Will it be about that? Like, what kind of take are they going to do with She-Hulk? And now we know. HT, tell us about it.
She-Hulk will be a half-hour legal comedy, according to Kevin Feige. And it will be something that will follow a case of the week structure and pulls from writer-artist John Byrne's 1980s She-Hulk run, which was a sort of semi-satirical take on the character, and basically, from Wikipedia, from what I could see on Wikipedia, sort of presented a more fourth wall breaking spin on the character of Jennifer Walters, who is an attorney and cousin of Bruce Banner, and gets her powers via an emergency blood transfusion, but can Hulk out and retain her intelligence and personality while she does.
This seems so funny to me that like Marvel is doing these kind of swings, and of course it's not theatrically, it's not in the movie theater, but it's like, okay, so like WandaVision is going to be this weird like Truman Show like take on the TV sitcom of yesteryear, and Falcon Winter Soldier I'm guessing is going to be kind of like a buddy cop thing, and Loki's going to be like the strange time traveling cop show, and What If, which you just mentioned, Brad, I think it's kind of like the Twilight Zone animated anthology series, and Miss Marvel I'm guessing is going to be like a teen drama, and Secret Invasion could be like a spy thriller, and Ironheart could be teenage Iron Man but gender swapped. I don't know what Hawkeye or Moon Knight is, but like where else do you think Marvel can take their stories? Because now they're really starting to, I mean, I guess they've always tried to like do these like Marvel stories in different film genres, but it really seems like they're with Disney Plus and what they're being allowed to do on these TV shows, they're allowing to do things way off the branch more. Do you know what I mean? What would you like to see them do, HD?
I feel like they've done almost every other genre. I'd like to see a good noir. I feel like that's something that I haven't really seen in the Marvel universe. Something that plays with genre in a way that would be really fun. I don't know. I can't think of any other genres off the top of my head, but it does seem
What do you think Hawkeye is going to be?
Oh, well, Hawkeye, I'm imagining, will follow the Matt Fraction comics, David Ayoff comics, and it's very much how would I describe it? It's like an irreverent, not spy comedy. It's like a buddy comedy at the same time as being it. Well, how would you describe it?
I don't know. I've read the comic and I can't describe it. I would say that the style of it is kind of like, I don't want to say noir, but it has like these shadows and stuff.
Yeah, there is like a mystery that is unsolved every time. But I mean, the closest reference I can make is to the Zeppo episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which follows a character who kind of is on the sidelines of all the action and all of his misadventures. So it's definitely something that's a bit more on the irreverent side, and which makes it so fun and exciting.
Brad, I have to ask you, since you're the superhero bits guy on the site, what genre would you like to see Marvel enter into with like a series?
I mean, I think the one that they haven't really ventured into yet, but they have promised to in the future with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is doing something that's a little more horror-oriented. I think something along those lines set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe could be really interesting. And hopefully, Doctor Strange will tap into that, especially, since Sam Raimi is directing this time around.
Do you think we'll ever get the Marvel gross-out comedy?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. Sam Raimi is obviously famous for doing, very grotesque and nasty kind of, gooey. Bloody...
Oh, I wasn't even talking about him. I'm just saying, do you think like there'll be a day where we get the Marvel Hangover or Bridesmaid? Do you know what I mean? Like it's like the over the top like gross out
cringe comedy.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I think the closest we'll get is probably what we're getting from Taika Waititi with Thor Ragnarok. Because I think you risk getting a little too silly. But then again, since Marvel Studios is planning on making Deadpool 3, it seems, I think that'll probably fit that little comedy niche.
Yeah, I keep on forgetting Deadpool is part of this now. So yeah, that's I guess they can do anything. Crazy. Okay, that does it for today's Slash Film Daily. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please rate and review this episode on iTunes. Tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you on Wednesday.